Well, good evening, friends. I am Pastor Michelle here at Harmony Creek Church, and I thought I would go ahead and share with you my official Ash Wednesday sermon. And so there's this famous cartoon, this popular cartoon called Peanuts. I'm sure you've heard of it, with Charlie Brown and Peppermint Patty and Snoopy. Anyway, there's this great image from one of the comic strips where it shows Charlie Brown sitting beside his beloved dog Snoopy, and they're sitting at the end of a boating dock. So, they're sitting at the dock of the bay watching the tide roll away. So we see their backs as they look out over the blue water in front of them, and Charlie Brown says to his friend, "Someday we will all die, Snoopy." And Snoopy replies, "True, but on all the other days we will not." The simple scene and the two-sentence conversation gets at something true. And in a similar way, Ash Wednesday gets at something true. Someday we will all die, but on all the other days, we will not. So tonight is the start of the 40 days, not including Sundays, of Lent. We mark the beginning of Lent by acknowledging together that death is our one common denominator. We get the sign of the cross marked on our forehead or hand, and we're told, from dust we come, to dust we return. And this applies to everyone. I love the story of about a little girl who came home from Sunday school, and she asked her mom, "Is it true that we come from dust?" And her mom says, "It's true." And then the little girl asks, "Is it also true that when we die, we go back to dust?" A very intense conversation. And the mom says, "Yes." And so the mom asks little Lois, "Why all the questions?" Lois runs to her room and comes out excited and says, "Mom, I just looked under my bed and there's something either coming or going." Okay, I like that joke. That was pretty funny. And I think this could be said for places in our house too. But yes, we come from dust and we return to dust. As Rachel Held Evans, I like what she points out. She says, it's not just dust. It's not just any ordinary dust. It's stardust, the scientists say. She says the iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones, and the chlorine in our skin forged in the furnaces of ancient stars whose explosions scattered the elements across the galaxy. From the ashes grew new stars, and around one of them a system of planets and asteroids and moons. A cluster of dust coalesced to form the Earth, and life emerged from the debris of 8 billion-year-old deaths. End quote. What an imagery, right? That we don't just come from dust, we come from stardust. I love that. And I have to say, there's always something so sacred, so special about this day. And I especially love that we are able to do Ashes to Go every year. Even with the iffy weather today, we had so many people come through, probably about 50 people. And many were people that I may have known, but some were strangers who wanted to make sure to get the sign of their cross on their foreheads. And I love walking up to people in their car and telling them, and while I mark the sign of the cross, and telling them that from dust, they come from dust, and to dust they will go. And throughout all of that and beyond, they are held in God's love, that they are God's beloved through and through. God is never going to give us up. And that is, for me, one of the most important messages of Ash Wednesday. That God will never, ever, ever give us up. No matter what. And I love that imagery. And I will share that we had a family come through. It was a mom and a dad and then 3 kids. And I did the imposition of ashes for the parents and then 1 kid. And the mom asked if any of the other kids wanted the cross, and they all said no. So I walked away. But then all of a sudden I hear them, they yell out to me as I'm walking away, and they're like, "Oh, the kids changed their mind." And I go back to the car, and this little boy, who I think was no older than 2 years old, he was sobbing because he didn't get the cross. And so it is always something so incredibly special. I feel like you cross the I don't know, the heaven and earth threshold when you put the sign of the cross on a child. when you touch the child's forehead and you say, from dust to dust, from dust you come, to dust you return. Oh, it's something very powerful. And I bring that up because Nadia Bolz-Weber says this about the moment she did ashes on the forehead of a newborn baby. She said, I did not know yesterday that today, 19 hours after standing in the funeral of one child, I would stand in the birth room of another. Less than a day after preaching about love and suffering and Jesus, I held Duffy and Charlie's baby Willa in my arms and thanked God for new life. Then her parents asked for ashes, for them and for Zane and for the baby Willa too. I pressed ever so gently into her brow onto this brand new skin that had only been exposed to air for a few precious hours and said that even she, full of beauty and hope and just hours from her mother's womb, even she will return to dust in the very heart of God. And then I knew more than any other Ash Wednesday in my life that the promises of baptism and funerals, the promises of birth and death are so totally wrapped up together. For we come from God, and to God we shall go. End quote. And I love that. And I almost could just end the sermon there. But I would be remiss if I don't at least talk briefly about the passage from Matthew that was included today. So in Matthew, I included words from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And it was the part about practicing piety in public, not making a big show of it when you pray, not making a big show of it when you give. And I want to talk briefly about it. You know, throughout the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, hypocrisy is a key theme. The HarperCollins Bible Commentary points out, originally the word hypocrite was designated an actor on a stage. The thought here seems to be that those who practice piety to win attention for themselves are only pretending to be pious, but they are more concerned, actually, with gaining honor from themselves than for God. End quote. I can think of a few people like that. The word hypocrite actually appears 3 times in our passage that was read. It shows up when Jesus says that when you give alms, don't sound a trumpet as hypocrites do. When Jesus says, whenever you pray, don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand in public so they can be seen by others. When you fast, don't look somber like the hypocrites, for they mark their faces to show others that they are fasting. And I think, this is an interesting reading for Ash Wednesday, as we have marks on our faces, but not marks on our faces that show that we are fasting. These marks, these signs of the cross that we have, it is our way of bravely acknowledging and witnessing to others that we are all finite beings. And yes, we might have so many things that keep us apart and keep us separated as human beings. We may fight and we just can't get along, right? But there is no escaping that common thread that runs throughout all of humanity, no matter what. And that is that we are all going to die. But remember what Snoopy said. On all the other days, we will not. So I ask you, as we enter into this time of Lent, as we enter into this season, how shall we spend all those other days? All the days that we will not die? That is the question. Amen. So thank you, and may you always know that God will never, ever, ever give you up.